The MMO genre is one of the core pillars of gaming as a whole. From the earliest, most simple text-based online games, or MUDs, to entire worlds that have connected players across the globe and forever changed the landscape for gamers and developers alike. Entire history textbooks could be written to document the genre, the early days, its rise to popularity, and its cultural significance. Though more and more you'll start to hear the ideas that MMOs are dead, I truly believe that the classics will never go away, and I hope that there is a future there, inspired by the titans of ages past. If you look at the entire genre, from its humble beginnings to its greatest hits and everything else in between, you'll notice that all of these games have something in common. And that something is the setting. Have you ever noticed that the most popular MMO titles of all time are always either based in a medieval fantasy world or in outer space? The more I thought about this, the more I started to see all of the similarities between these two settings, however different they may seem, and why to this day they are the ideal backdrop to host that unbeatable MMO formula, the one that makes the games in this genre so addictive, entertaining, and timeless. Today we're going to explore these similarities and talk about why time and time again these settings are chosen for MMOs. Why is every MMO medieval or in space? Before we get started, hi, my name is Angelika, and I'm seeing in the comments that a lot of you guys here are actually game developers. Whether you are indie developers working on your own passion projects, or developers from big companies that are responsible for some of our favorite games. I'm so grateful to have you guys here, and I have so much respect for what you do. Game development is such a nuanced and multifaceted craft, and it requires knowledge and skills in areas that you may not have even thought of. And this is why, once again, I would like to happily recommend Brilliant to you guys. Brilliant is a platform that helps you level up your skills every day with thousands of interactive lessons in mathematics, science, programming, data analysis, and AI, all essential tools for game development. Rather than presenting you with hours of lectures that you need to listen to and try pay attention, Brilliant offers a hands-on method of learning which is not only more effective than a lecture, but it also works a lot better to keep you motivated and working on yourself and your skills every day. It's almost unbelievable that you get that high university standard of knowledge without that traditional sitting in a lecture hall and trying to soak up information side of things. You get courses that were created by industry professionals as well as actual university professors. It's a great tool in that it lets you build up your knowledge in complex subjects from the ground up. For example, I think that there are a lot of misconceptions about mathematics as a subject. Like, oh, when am I ever going to use this in the real world? But the courses offered by Brilliant are there to help you develop problem-solving skills with a focus on applicable mathematical concepts that will actually change the way you perceive the subject. And that's to say nothing of the extensive programming courses, which again, game developers especially, with the state of the industry, I am really hoping to see some skilled professionals with good ideas rise up. Regardless of your current skill level or where you're at, you can build yourself up from the foundations to a really high level of knowledge using Brilliant. So to try everything that Brilliant has to offer for free for a full 30 days, you can go to brilliant.org/Angelikatosh, you can scan the QR code on screen, or you can visit the link down below in the description. This will also get you 20% off an annual premium subscription. Once again, thank you Brilliant for sponsoring this video. And now, what is an MMO? MMO stands for Massively Multiplayer Online. This is a type of game where you will have a large quantity of players online at the same time, ranging from the hundreds to thousands to even millions, sharing the same fantasy world where they will collaborate on quests, party and raid scenarios, and just have fun together doing everything else that a particular MMO has to offer. For this video, we are focusing on MMOs in the MMORPG subgenre, where, to further elaborate, you have features such as a persistent world that continues to move on and exist even when you have logged off, layered character progression, social systems, and varied and ever-evolving PvP and PvE content. MMOs are really big. With what already feels like a world of opportunity in the RPG side of things, this is further expanded by that massively multiplayer online element. Understanding the scale of an MMO, you're going to need a setting that's going to be able to accommodate all of these things comfortably, while also making them believable, logical, and consistent. It needs to be done in a way that keeps you engaged and also contributes to one of the most important elements of these games, and that is escapism. If you're going to spend all your time in a game, and let's be honest, MMOs require nearly all of your time. You're going to want it to be a world that you can actually escape to and be fully immersed in. And let's explore that medieval fantasy setting first. When you look at a list of the top MMORPGs of all time, you will see titles like RuneScape, World of Warcraft, Ultima Online, EverQuest, ESO, Guild Wars 2, and countless others. And all of them, in their own way, share this medieval fantasy setting. But why here? What are the roots and inspiration? I'm sure it will come as no surprise to you that this is all heavily influenced by Dungeons and Dragons, and D&D, though it is a whole world in its own and it has more than just one specific influence, I want to take a moment to focus on the heavy Tolkien influence and specifically The Lord of the Rings. It's very obvious and it will probably resonate the most with my viewers here. Lord of the Rings is an excellent example to look at for identifying that MMO formula. It has everything that MMOs use as their core game concepts and mechanics. You have this big open world, or Middle-earth. This land is home to many different races, including the most obvious: humans, elves, dwarves, and orcs, a term that Tolkien popularized and gave form to. You have this formidable, looming threat in Mordor in the form of Sauron, a clearly defined end goal with the main quest and mission. Side missions that are encountered and completed along the way. A clear progression from humble beginnings to seasoned adventurers, and even more powerful beings can also be observed. Gandalf the Grey to Gandalf the White, for example, or the Strider to King of Gondor. A party of adventurers where each person has their own role to play, taking on the threats and dangers of the world together. It's totally unsurprising that there is in fact a Lord of the Rings based MMO, but more importantly, in every other popular MMO from the beginning of MMOs, you can find this structure and all of these tropes that are present in the Lord of the Rings. It's an absolute no-brainer that of course tons of games would be based on these concepts, and an online multiplayer element was inevitable, considering how much this story focuses on the concept of working together, relying on one another, and celebrating the strengths of each individual party member. Unlike single-player games where often the focus is on one big, important hero, The Lord of the Rings has many heroes, all playing different roles to ultimately achieve the same end goal for the greater good. And now looking at all of this all together, why was the medieval fantasy good for The Lord of the Rings to begin with? Look at how seamlessly this formula was worked into this medieval setting. And why does it work so well? Why do these fantastical beings and unreal magical concepts fit into backdrops based on real-world history? Much of the Middle Ages are shrouded in mystery. This is due to a number of reasons, ranging from the very medium that was used to record history at the time having deteriorated or decayed, or simply being destroyed for political or religious reasons. Physical books and scrolls lost to the fires of ignorance and, in some cases, censorship. There are limited written records coming from the common folk, as many of them didn't have access to education and so they were illiterate. And so we rely on sources mainly from the elite, and some things that were passed down orally, though just like Chinese whispers, we can't know how much of it has been distorted or lost over time that way also. This gives it just enough of that mysterious and unknown element to allow writers, game developers, and filmmakers the creative freedom to craft these fantastical worlds that house our favorite stories and, of course, the topic of this video, MMORPGs. We can study what is available, but just like most of history, we have no way of knowing exactly how things were back then. We can't travel back in time to see it. So we can allow our imagination to fill in the gaps. And by using this setting as a foundation, writers fill those gaps with mythical creatures, magic, evil beings, and all kinds of monsters. It makes you feel so much more immersed and invested in the world and its stories, as it almost feels like all of this could be true. You can't say for sure that none of this existed back then. You weren't there. Even if logically you understand these things aren't really possible, there's no evidence to back them up, it's just believable enough against this specific backdrop that you can't help but lose yourself in the world and really escape reality. So many interesting concepts to play off, like the rise of Christianity in Europe and how you can translate that to fictional game worlds, their religions and belief systems, monarchies and leadership in different societies. Even fictional ones are a lot easier to comprehend if you have an understanding of the feudal system. MMOs, due to their scale and nature, require such complexities and numerous elements to really justify the size of the world, since you've so much going on there. I live in Ireland, and there are so many castles and towers all around here. Lots of medieval towns and similar structures. When you look at them, they really do feel otherworldly, like there could be some magical essence about them. And they really evoke this sort of feeling of adventure and a need to explore that I think lives deep within every human being. I mentioned World of Warcraft, RuneScape, EverQuest, all those familiar and popular titles in the MMORPG genre. But what about things like EVE Online, Star Wars: The Old Republic, Star Trek Online? Well, just as writers rely on the mysterious nature of the Middle Ages to build up their worlds, there's nothing quite as mysterious as the vast and unknown of outer space. The deep and unexplored infinite universe that we all exist in. A boundless enigma that inspires both curiosity and fear. We understand now that space exploration requires very advanced and expensive technology, the likes of which will make what we have now seem primitive if we're talking realistic, deep space exploration. Games that are based in this setting have adopted the idea of very futuristic, high-tech spacecrafts, and of course, with that comes the possibility of exploring an infinite universe with different planets and all the spaces in between. It's perfect for the scale required for an MMORPG, allowing enough room to fit all of these elements that make up this genre of games. And of course, infinite room for creativity, allowing writers to create immersive and believable worlds for players who have no way of knowing if these things that exist in the game aren't really out there. Us simple mortals will probably never get to explore space in our lifetime, but at least we can get a glimpse of what's possibly out there as a true escape from reality. Aside from that, with these particular settings, there are a lot of things that actually work really well in terms of gameplay. Thinking of a really core element of any game, let's talk about combat. In a medieval setting, you have such a wide selection of weapons, both that existed in the real world and those that are totally fictional based on those real weapons. There's nothing more straightforward than your classic sword fighting or archery, and of course they look really good alongside fictional concepts like magic, which in itself is an infinite world in terms of even schools of magic. In space, you could look back to what we said about the kind of equipment that's actually required to go to space to begin with. And now imagine all the different futuristic weapons that could be invented to fit such a setting. Just like progressing your skills with magic or a weapon in a medieval world, a game set in outer space could allow for weapons or spacecraft upgrades, keeping you engaged in your MMO in terms of progressing further and further. For both settings, and we kind of mentioned this earlier, there are infinite opportunities for expansion in terms of new mythical or alien races, new and unexplored lands, new threats that you need to face, societies, everything that you can think of. They're so flexible and they can scratch the itch that us humans naturally have for exploring these unknown and unreachable places across widely popular genres like sci-fi. But there's more to it than that. We talked about how the medieval period has a lot of that mysterious and unknown side to it, but so do a lot of other time periods in history, even way before the Middle Ages. But few things are as romantic as the very image of a literal knight in shining armor on horseback, a mystical sorceress, an agile thief in the night. There's a kind of artistic nature to them that is so picturesque and charming, it really makes these games feel like art, and it makes you feel good about yourself being a part of it. MMOs need you to fall in love with them. They need you to commit, and if you've ever played an MMO, you know just how demanding they are. Which is why, again, they have to have a sort of romantic element about them to really entice you. In a similar way in space, you are this cosmic explorer. You can operate all of this high-tech equipment. You're brave and heroic. If you're into sci-fi, it's quite a glamorous image, really, in a way that totally defeats having an MMO set in our current times, for example, where you can be an angry streamer or some sort of a nuisance like a TikTok prank channel. Nobody wants an MMO about their real life. Real life is basically like an MMO. Really. We want big, bold, romantic and distant concepts that can take us so far away from this real world that we won't even notice how the time passes while we're in-game. And so, with these established tropes and appeal making up both of these settings, along with the cultural familiarity and just room for infinite story and world expansion, most MMORPGs will opt for the medieval fantasy or outer space sci-fi settings. MMOs with other settings do of course exist, like Fallout 76 with a sort of post-apocalyptic setting. Or maybe some MMOs incorporate a bit of this and a bit of that, like Guild Wars, which is a medieval fantasy, but it features some of those steampunk elements. Or Allods Online, which has both medieval fantasy and sci-fi elements. Some games break away from the medieval fantasy entirely, like New World, which is set in what looks like the 17th century, which, by the way, very interesting to set an MMO here. Unfortunately, I don't think they were able to make it engaging enough, as myself and a lot of people just quit past a certain level. There just isn't enough there. But this isn't necessarily the setting's fault. I would love to see another studio with another game try out this setting for an MMO again in future, because I don't think it's totally impossible. I also don't think that every historical time period works for MMOs. Like, it's hard to imagine an MMO in a Regency era England type setting. Maybe it's not impossible, but I feel like it might look a bit silly. Some historical time periods work better for single-player story games, like the Renaissance and Assassin's Creed 2 is a perfect example. With the kind of game that it is, it gives the very necessary recognition to the historical facts that it's loosely based on, facts that made it the Renaissance period. The Middle Ages are just ambiguous and broad enough for there to be a lot more room and opportunity to build up a fantasy world. That, and plus the grittiness of the setting and lack of any modern technology, allows writers to really get creative here. Just like some unspecified distant future in outer space. That said, game developers and writers still should be mindful and reasonable with their chosen setting. Even with something as broad as the Middle Ages, having so many different concepts that you can add to them, it's not an everything goes situation. It's very possible to add things that will feel completely out of place. Like World of Warcraft has recently gone viral for all the wrong reasons. And here's the clip.
Stop this! Dinath fought to save all of Azeroth. He sold us out so the Alliance and Horde could wage war in Kar-Zalgar. You'll never understand. For Erethdor!
This game cinematic is absolutely awful, and while I could go into all the different reasons why, I just want to focus on this glasses thing they've got going on here. There are a lot of different things that they've added to modern WoW that kind of look like this, so out of place, a little bit weird. And this is why I don't play retail. Like, I'm not interested in playing World of Starbucks Fantasy Quest. There's just so many things in retail that make it feel that way. It's no wonder that WoW Classic and private servers are still hugely popular, because I mean, we don't have anything else, really. I know I'm not alone in this, but as always, I know that there will also be some people that get mad at me for saying this, but I think that retail WoW still has an audience because of what World of Warcraft was. It retains its player base because of the World of Warcraft foundation that it has. And maybe somebody genuinely enjoys this, and that's great. I'm not going to tell you what you can and can't like. But in my eyes, everything that was charming about the game and everything that made it World of Warcraft is long gone. It's no longer this unique and magical world, and part of that is just a plain disregard for its roots and original setting in the name of adding all of these new flashy things. You definitely have to be reasonable about what you're adding and how you're expanding to not risk losing an existing player base that loves your game and becoming a laughingstock. But anyways, that was a bit of a side note, and that kind of covers it for why MMORPGs are always medieval or in space. At the end of the day, a game isn't solely defined by its setting. MMOs aren't good just because they're in a medieval or outer space setting. They're good because the games themselves were created by passionate developers who love what they do, who care about their game worlds and player base, and who want to deliver a unique and magical experience through polished gameplay and engaging mechanics. Part of the experience is of course down to the communities that inhabit these MMOs, as well as your own capacity to escape and immerse yourself there. MMORPGs are in their own right a unique and complicated art form that I truly hope isn't actually dying, and somewhere out there we have developers who are cooking some real future gems for us, so that we don't have to play old school RuneScape and classic WoW forever. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to leave a like and subscribe. Don't forget to check out my official channel merch that's running for a limited time in the description below. Thanks to my channel members, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Be seeing you, bye!